You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Hello, everybody. Gail Kraft here with the Empowering Process podcast. And with me today is someone who you're just going to have a blast with. And this is Jane Powers, Jane M. Powers. And she has her little subtitle or her tagline that Let's Talk Impact. She is an amazing woman. She's a business coach, and she uses her straightforward, big-hearted style, guiding thousands to transform their message into money from a platform with her Speak to Profit formula. So we're going to talk a little bit maybe about that. I don't know. But she has decades of successful speaking and coaching, and perhaps most importantly of all, real life experience. And that's what we're going to talk about. Founding and running multiple million-dollar businesses, Jane appreciates that success is truly about the power of your message. And we're going to talk about shame, which affects the power of your message. Jane, welcome.
Heck, shame affects the power of everything we do. And you know, it's the number one topic that many people avoid because it feels crappy. There is nothing, I'm just going to go and process my shame. Nobody wants to do that. That is no fun. So yeah, thank you for having me here. I have no idea what's going to emerge from this. So if you are dialing in, do they dial in? Tuning
no,
in.
we tune in.
The old days, we tune the dial. Just hang in there because I have no idea what's going to come out of the two of us today. So you may be surprised.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So, you know, I have so many stories of shame to share. I don't know where to start first, but I will start here. At a time in my life when I was doing some deep work on personal development and facing anger or sadness, facing the big things that were in my way, I was then ready to face shame. And the coach I was working with said, okay, so what about shame? And I'm like, yeah, I can't find it. There's no shame. And she's like, I don't want you to create it. And I don't want you to make it up, but you sure there's nothing in there? And I'm like, no, that's how deep the sucker was buried. When I finally started to face shame, it's like, oh my God, there it is. Oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. So like, I don't know which story to start with. I know one that I haven't talked about yet. And this is actually shame for being responsible for the death of my mother and being responsible for the position that put my father in. So my mom, I was 3 when she passed away. And, you know, when you're a child, everything is your fault. You take on responsibility. What did I do? I wasn't good enough. I wasn't whatever. And my father's dating strategy was to be on the phone with some chick that he wanted to meet and talk about how tough it was to be a single dad and be the mom and the father for this little girl. And I'm sitting there listening to how tough his life is because of me. So I was ashamed of the fact that I was a burden. I was responsible for my mother's death and a burden on my father, right? So there's a double whammy there. And that was something that, what did that mean for me growing up? That meant I was a tough ass bitch, right? That, you know, hey, I don't need you. I will take care of it. I will do it on my own, right? Missing so many opportunities in life because I thought I was invincible. So the shame has a weird way of weaving through your life. So as you're shaking your head, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm just sitting here listening to, you know, everybody has a story. And I was just listening. So here's my latest. I'm obsessed with Dateline. I think most people are. But I watched one where these 3 girls were kidnapped for 10 to 12 years, chained up, kidnapped, and just the amount of processing that and trauma they lived through. And I was thinking, because I do my work around revealing the missing piece, and that is for survivors of trauma and sexual abuse. And many times I deal with individuals who had a brush of trauma, and I don't discount any level of it. But what happens is they look and compare the level of trauma, say these three young women encountered, and then they end up looking at theirs and they just, it's nothing compared to theirs. People hear my story and they're like, oh, guys, I shouldn't even be whining about mine. But I believe that each of us can endure to the level of our expansion that is required in this lifetime. Meaning, the greatest souls choose the greatest lessons. I don't know who said it, look it up, but somebody else, I'm not that bright. Somebody else said that wonderful quote, but it truly is. And you look at the one young lady that came out of there, she was tough as nails, and nothing was going to stop her. And it sounds like you had that same thing. I had the same thing, youngest of 7, and I thought it's me against the world. But what I believe happens is shame disguises itself as anger, blame, sadness, depression, anxiety, everything that's running around. If we're not running around bold and confident, speaking our truth, confronting what needs to be confronted, stopping the madness, then we're living in buried shame. And I think it shows up in every way, shape, and form. But here's the thing. Shame is about a broken, inadequate part of ourselves that we would have to admit to. So
what wait, you're saying I need to admit I'm broken?
No, I would never require that.
Okay,
Never.
thank you. Okay. Go continue.
But think about it. We learn this, shame on you. Okay, program that in, keep that in your memory bank, that behavior is wrong. And then we started to take and pick up the stick ourselves and beat ourselves and go, shame on me for having that thought, having that desire. Now, I work in the world of sexual abuse and interventions and preventions back in the day. And now I deal with, working with bringing the voice back to anyone that's lived through trauma and survivorship. And I look at that, and many times we're not willing to step out and say, you know what, I've got some secrets, because the world is not supportive in so many ways. I mean, it hasn't been since the last, my gosh, 10 years would be too long, because 10 years ago, we still had stuff happening. So I think a lot of around shame is our fear of judgment by others. It's all it comes down to. So if you get the promotion, or you go to get the promotion and you don't get it, there's a little embarrassment, a little shame involved in that. And it's, well, no big deal. You go home and you cry and you're like, son of a nutcracker, right? So I am about be bold, be true, be you. And if people don't like it, it's none of your business.
Well, exactly. So before we met, I'm walking to the computer. I'm thinking, if you ever lied in your life, you're hiding shame.
Yes.
If you ever lied to yourself, you're hiding shame. If you ever kept secrets, you're hiding shame, right? If you ever didn't say something to protect someone else's feelings, that's bullshit. You're hiding shame. Yeah. And we all, I'm sorry, own it.
Yeah. Yes. And it's hard. And if you grew up in a certain religion or a culture, or I remember I was doing some Bible study, because I was always on a spiritual journey. I've studied everything under the sun. And I remember these Christians, and I'm open to everybody's beliefs, but they kept telling me, you just don't know you're a sinner yet. And I'm like, no, I get up every morning and I wish for a better day than yesterday in the same way I live today. And I remember thinking, gosh, I grew up Catholic, right? Force-fed Catholic. Now I'm, a survivor from that trauma, but it, it was like how I'd have to go to the priest, sit in front of this priest and say, I think it was something like, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. And I'm like, I lied. I'm lying now. Like I couldn't figure out.
I'm lying that I lied because I can't think of a sin. So
yeah, I can't think of a reason that I should feel bad about myself, but it was constantly trained into us. Now, here's what's even worse is if you've experienced trauma, abuse, domination, anything, what ends up happening is you end up questioning yourself because of the power of the manipulation. The power of the mind has you questioning yourself. And then we just continue to pile, see, I knew you weren't that big of a deal. See, I knew you were the dummy, whatever it is. We get embarrassed, that shame. And I'm going to go to the part of the topic of shame that I absolutely love. And that is, we feel ashamed at, different things at work. But here's where shame, in my opinion, impacts the world so greatly. And that is in your intimate relationships. That is huge. Here's what I find ironic. And we talked a little bit about this. I am a proponent of express who you are, just don't hurt anyone else. Like, that's the truth. I don't care if you go out and sleep with 82 people. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care if you are married and you have an open, ethical, non-monogamous relationship. Poly, it does not matter. But what happens, the majority of individuals, this is my theory. So please, this is my theory. Don't look it up. There's no Harvard study. Here's what I believe. Individuals, especially around the sexual abuse, individuals that have been sexually abused have been trained in a certain manner to be secretive, covert, hiding. There's a lot, there's a dynamic that goes into the abuse. So as we grow older, we start to repress the programming that is a part of how we were trained. And if we were raised in that type of a thing, even if it's a known assailant, they manipulate the mind to where you question yourself and therefore you act in a certain way or put up with. And I believe in the adult world, most people live in shame of what their mind would love or where they go in their desire. Because it's too related to the dirty little secret.
Well, here's a dirty little secret.
It's the dirty little secret. And then it becomes today's dirty little secret. And today's dirty little secret may just be that you get to explore whatever you want. And I did a lot of research for my book. So I've interviewed dominatrix. I've interviewed submissives, BDSM, you name it. I have interviewed individuals. And what I find is everyone that loves that sexual adventure has been abused to a certain degree. Now, my thing is, you've got to be in your body doing that and not outside of your body. If you check out, now we've got some dissociative style. And we need to check back in. And the only reason, in my opinion, anybody dissociates, has a style of that, or gets beside themselves is because they can't handle the shame that lives inside of them.
Yep, it's the beautiful escape. We're really great at learning how to escape ourselves. Yeah. Right. And I love, and I'm to blame too. I'm one of those people who says, be here now, right? Be real, face yourself. But I mean, what does that mean? What does that mean when you, Gail, can't even find the goddamn shame to talk about it in the first place? How can I be real when I can't even find it? Right?
An answer. Are you ready?
Yes.
In your voice. Because what people do, remember the saying, well, the saying was, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Right. Watch your words. Some people are like, oh, just let it go. But I believe, because I grew up the invisible kid. I could disappear, melt into the woodwork, and nobody would notice me missing for hours. Then I started to find that I didn't confront things. I was, oh, that'll hurt their feelings. Don't say anything. Meanwhile, I'm feeling like crap. I believe anything that goes unsaid, unexpressed, is a form of shame, and it builds on the pile of shame, even as if it's as simple as, oh, I don't, everybody wants to go to the movie. I hate that movie. I don't want to go to the movie. You're like, oh no, I'll go to the movie. And inside you're like, you're like, I hate this movie. What the hell?
I don't like action movies. I want to go to a love story.
Yeah. And why did I say yes to it? And then you're mad at yourself. You resent them. You're angry about the situation. And it's a matter of, if you find your voice, you reduce the amount of shame. I'm telling you, it gets camouflaged so abruptly that you're just like, oh, just let it go. So I found my voice, and I think that's the cure to everything. I will tell you right now, if you don't like yourself, you don't feel you're worthy, you don't have value, and you and I have, your mom passed when you were much younger. I was, just 14, and I thought I should have saved her. I blamed myself for years. Okay, at 3, at 14, how do you save? Like, my mom was alcoholic, prescription drug. How do you save that individual? In 8th grade, when you're, it doesn't make any sense, but we carry the shame of inaction. And I believe anything you feel about yourself that you can't do, here's the best tip I can give you: tattle on yourself.
Yeah.
Be a big tattletale. This is who I am. This is what I do. And you'll find, like, people say, Jane, give us one thing nobody knows about you. And I'm like, hang on, there's got to be something. There's got to be something I have not shared. And I'm not saying go and dump on everyone and blah, here's my life, but command your voice. I remember, so I got divorced. I'm so bad with years. I think 8 years ago, probably something like that. And I remember our relationship was no intimacy. There was nothing going on. And let me backtrack to 19, I don't even know when. And I was running around with all my friends. They all had boyfriends. And I was thinking, wait a minute, I think I have a crush on you, my girlfriends, right? And I was like, oh, don't say anything. Like, oh my God, this was back in the, I don't even want, like 70s, late 70s, early 80s. And I was a mess because I could not be, I couldn't go against society. I couldn't go against the grain. And I started to realize, I'm like, whoa, you got to hide this. There's some serious, serious repercussions to that. So I end up fine. And I just owned it. I thought, you know what? This is who I am. I'm going to fake it. Like, I just was like, nobody can judge me. I don't care. So anywho, I get to about 8 years ago, I decided, I thought, you know what? I need to be hugged. I need to have intimacy, because what I felt, this is an interesting description. What I felt was I had a monster living inside of me, because I wanted this adventure. I wanted to, and here's the people, this is not G-rated. I wanted to go have sex in the woods. I literally, that was like and I thought, oh, God, never say that out loud. Someone's going to think, oh, this is going to, and I'm like, I want to go. They have these sex clubs. I'm going to go check one of those out. Like, I just said, I have a monster that lives inside of me.
Crying for attention.
But how crazy is that to say it's a monster when it's a natural expression of who I am? And it's interesting because when I met my lovely, wonderful wife, we've been together 6 years. And it's funny because I said, when I met, I said, here's the thing. I have got a monster that lives inside of me. And I described everything. She goes, well, that's so weird because it sounds pretty normal to me. So I just sat back and I went, oh my, I'm not a freak. Like, I don't fit the textbook of what people say. Oh, well, you're in the category of a lesbian. I don't even call myself that anymore because I don't fit in that category. And I'm not this and I'm not this. So shame is, I'm so worried about the world looking at me that I can't honor who I am. I'm not saying you have to go out and find something in the forest that you're going to do. What I'm saying is, find today. Do I want to go to the movie or do I want to go to a restaurant? Yes or no. Make your yes be yes, your no be no. Lukewarm, you're living in shame.
Right? There you go. There you go. And we do it all the time. So it's interesting because, with my podcast, like I said, oh, so here's a story I haven't told, right? Oh, okay. So here's a story that I'm getting to the point where, like, I know that you've heard this one before, but I'm going to say it again.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Right. And understand that, when I talk about processing through, so my at 2 years old, I was sitting down and I was playing with clothes hangers, and my mom's at the sink cleaning and a pipe broke. She went ballistic. 2 years old, I caused the pipes to break, right? I caused my mom to be hysterical. At 2 years old, I made the decision that I was responsible for balance in my family. You don't think this should happen? Think about it. It absolutely does happen, right? And so the point being is that we all have stories that we forget about and we bury, but those decisions and those buried emotions carry with you through the life. And so unpacking to me is, don't feel sorry for that incident. For me, I've already felt sorry enough for myself and I'm over it. Right. I can talk about it and, I don't get choked up, because it's just an event that happened in my life and it affected me a certain way. And no, it doesn't.
Yeah. I like to describe my life as just my past. It was a gross inconvenience. I mean, and somebody asked me, well, isn't it going through all that, isn't it why you are who you are? And I'm like, well, sure, but I didn't get a chance to be someone else. I didn't get the option to say, okay, Jane, would you like us to encourage you, to motivate you, to empower you, and put you out into the world with all the confidence? I never got that option. Most of us don't. Most of us are a product of the unprocessed stuff that our parents lived through. So most of us are a product of our environment, but more importantly, of our parental issues or, unclaimed shame. And I, somebody can say, remember, I think it was Conversations with God. I don't remember. I'm the worst. You'll see, I'll quote and I'll be like, research. I don't know who said it, but I love it.
Yep.
Right. There's only two emotions, fear and love.
I say that all the time.
Right. Fear and love. It must have been you, Gail. It was not Conversations with God or whatever book it was from, but fear and love. And truth be told, fear is a catalyst or I believe, a product of a reflective part of ourself. So if we feel afraid, you have to ask, why do I feel so afraid? Well, what if someone finds out about my thoughts? What if someone finds out about what I did or what I lived through? Do you know, when I started doing Revealing the Missing Piece, I would do workshops. No one would raise their hand because they were ashamed of their past. And they would work so hard to cover that up within their own environment. And that's the worst thing, because that secret of any sort, I don't care whatever the level of abuse was. I used to do work in the prisons, drug and alcohol treatment centers, the community. I had one young girl, I think she was 6th or 7th grade, and her mother was schizophrenic. And the neighbors would tell stories. This poor little girl would come into counseling and sit down, and she would just shrivel up and sit there. And my work was to have her sitting up tall, standing up straight and saying, yeah, my mom's got a mental illness, and owning that rather than trying to cover it up. I remember after my mother passed and after I had gone through tons of therapy, I went back to my coaches and my teachers and I interviewed them. And I asked them, describe to me who I was growing up. Oh my God, you were so happy. You were so friendly. You were a little distant. You didn't really hang out with any, you were hanging out with everyone. And they're going on and on. And I would tell them about my history because they're teachers. I gave signs all over the place that there was some bad things going on at home. And, it was just like, oh, I'm sure it's not. She's just, making that up, has a great imagination. And it's like I was living according to what I felt kept me safe. And we do that and process. And you talk about when you were really young, it starts the minute we hit that planet and go, I know I came from somewhere that was much more expanded than this little life.
Right.
And then we go into that little life and our soul goes. I remember in retrospect, I remember envisioning my 3-year-old looking around going, this is not what life is supposed to be like. I need to dim my light, get through to safety, and then I can shine. I remember that. And it took me years to shine because that's why I started my business, right? I kept trying to do these revealing the missing piece workshops. No one was raising their hand. And I thought, well, how can I help people with what I want them to do? I want them to find their voice. Well, I've been a professional speaker over 30 some years. And I went, oh, that's a good way to do it.
Right? Whoops.
It was like right in front of my face. So I set out on a journey to help individuals find their voice. In their voice is their power. In their power, they can do anything.
And it's absolutely true. And the thing is once you get past the shame and get past the fear and get past the judgment and get past and you're able to do that, what ends up happening is you have a whole new world that starts to open up for you. And that in itself is scary. Anything new is scary, right? But it is a world. I mean, look at the people that I get to meet, right? Right. I mean, I would never have met you even 2 years ago. Thank you, COVID, for forcing me to go really, really deep, right? I had nothing else to do but dig deeper, right?
Yeah.
So, we're here, right? Jane is here. I am here for the sole purpose of being a vehicle to help those who are ready to dig deep, those who are ready for you to find their voice, right? To speak their truth. For me mine is about language as well. Different approach, but definitely language. Listen to the words you use. And I still catch myself every once in a while. I just called myself stupid. Why would I do that? What did I think? I don't think I'm stupid. Why did I say that word? Right? Right? It's a habit, but it's not a habit.
So, and I just look, so let's look at, because if a lot of people get confused by shame, a lot of people are like, no, I'm not bothered by that. Well, then why wouldn't you speak up? So I'm telling you, shame is camouflaged by so many other feelings. So what I would say to identify shame, you got to look, what would you be unwilling to share with the safest person on planet Earth? What would you be unwilling to tell someone else for fear of the repercussions, for fear of what they might think, for fear of? So when I was doing my research and I was looking into so many different situations, one woman said, I stayed in a marriage 28 years for fear of being left by my husband that was not honoring me, not affectionate, not all these things that were missing. She was absolutely miserable. And what she wanted was more in life. But 28 years staying in a marriage that broke her. So what you're not willing to stand up for is shame. What you are not willing to tell another is shame. What you're unwilling to allow yourself to think, feel, or fantasize about, that's your own judgment of yourself and shame, because you're trying to move away from the production, the original sin. I like to call it that. Well, what's the original sin? What anchored in that feeling of shame? Because for me, abuse was wrong to every level. I mean, it was my father, it was in my brothers, it was like grandparent. I mean, it was everybody, the entire family. There were no boundaries. So anytime I would have this thought of, oh, I'd love to do that, it brought me too close to this. And I went, oh, what is wrong with you? And that's what we do to ourselves, rather than saying, I'm an adult. I get to choose. I get to experiment. I get to have adventures. I get to say what I need, what I want. But anytime you're not willing to do that, I promise you, you're living under a blanket of shame.
And that is such a powerful awareness, because it doesn't take much to dissolve shame. I had, I'll tell you a little, okay, I'm going to go woo-woo here, guys, a little woo-woo. So my father's shame and my mother's shame came up, and their shame was about being Jewish. We kind of talked about this beforehand. And, he would hide the fact that he was Jewish while telling me, don't be ashamed of who you are, while he was completely ashamed. And I totally forgot about that until a few years ago. And I woke up and I'm like, what is that all about? Right. And also a little bit from my mother's side, because she's also was American Indian as well. So compound on that. So I called a shaman friend of mine and asked her, will you take me on a journey? And she said, oh, Gail, you don't need a journey. All you need to do is call the two of them down and bring shame down too and have a conversation. Right. So I'm like, okay, hung up, sat down, did my thing. And I'm telling you, here's what happened. Hey, Dad. Hey, Mom. Hey, Shane. Welcome. So I want to talk about this because it's been coming up and I really want to get to the root of it so that I can just kind of get it out of my life. What I heard was, oh, honey, that's long gone. You can let that go. That was it. That was it. So, and it was gone. I mean, I literally saw shame disappear, right? As far as that incident was concerned. And sometimes it's that easy. You just need validation that it's okay to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think and we know this, that status quo, known insanity is much easier than climbing up the hill of healing. We talk about this all the time. People, essentially, when it comes to evolving how they show up, people are lazy. It's hard work. It became an obsession for me. I was like, you know what? I'm going to stay awake. I'm going to notice what I'm noticing. If you notice what you're noticing, it will reflect exactly where you are in your life, exactly what you are feeling, exactly what you need to deal with. If you see a bunch of people that are arguing, you got some anger in you. If you see a bunch of anxious, depressed, whatever it is, they are reflecting to you what needs to be healed. And the hardest thing for people is to keep marching up the hill. And it's not for the faint at heart, but I'll tell you what it is. It prevents having a lot of baggage that you have to carry around, and shame, blame, guilt. Guilt is, they go, well, guilt and shame. I just call them the same damn thing, because what it means is I don't feel good about myself. At any point that you look in the mirror and you go, oh, look how big I am. I need to lose some weight. That's shame. It's all about the outside world. You've got to reflect, what is it in me that needs to be healed so that I can stand up? Anytime you're embarrassed, that's another form of shame. Oh, yes. Embarrassment is, and shame tends to be associated with guilt, and guilt, it's like, I think every emotion boils down to one thing: Do I love me? And do I love me more than what I think people are saying or what they'll think about me? That's what life boils down to. You can call it shame, you can call it anything you want, but it boils down to, do I find value in who I am? I went through, I still am this way. When Harry met Sally and she's ordering food, that's me. That is totally me. I had some special diet things. I'm not vegan. I wish I could, but I'm too picky. And I would order. And I remember early on, I had a couple of friends that were so uncomfortable with me special ordering. And they would shame me for it. And I would feel so bad. And then I'd get really mad and I'd be like, how dare them? But it was, I did not feel confident and own what I needed, wanted, and desired. And I'm here to tell you.
I used to get shamed about the fact that I ate my salad after my meal.
Oh,
yeah.
Isn't it? And it's silly little things. People, I'm going to tell you, those silly little things haunt you because they pile up and then they pile higher and then they go like this. And all of a sudden they're bigger than you. And the only way to knock that pile down is to say no more or a whole lot more. And finding your voice. I cannot emphasize. Somebody asked me, Jane, what saved your life? Besides sports, my voice. When I finally started saying no more, I confronted my father once. I got the nerve up. It was so scary. I confronted my father and I was like, this was not okay. Details. I went through everything. The minute I did that, I went, whoa, I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to be afraid of it. And quite frankly, Oprah Winfrey, I went on the Oprah Winfrey show. That was probably the one thing that just, it was a decision moment. I had been hiding out from my family. There were death threats, all kinds of stuff going on. I went on to the Oprah Winfrey show and I'm on camera, panned on camera to millions of people. And I thought, uh-oh, I either get to face this or I'm going to run the rest of my life. And I turned around and I faced my entire family. And I'll tell you, I had more power within me that I couldn't stop. Now, I didn't always feel that way. I wasn't always like, oh, here I come. I was like, okay, limber up, get ready, because you're going into the lion's den. And the only time I felt, and I believe for most individuals, I felt vulnerable or fearful when I was hiding an inadequacy or a piece of lack or shame that I didn't want somebody to find out about. So
right.
I had a therapist that said to me, oh, she'd always say this. And I thought, I hate you. Stop saying it. She's like, in your vulnerability, you will find your power. And I'm like, that's the dumbest saying ever. I'm not going to be vulnerable because I'm going to get hurt or I'm going to. And I started to realize, oh my gosh, I'm hiding. And guess what? When they find you, surprise, we know all.
Yeah, well, and they'll devour you because you're so afraid.
Yes, we're all a pack of wolves. There's got to be an alpha. You get to be the alpha. I go into any room. Trust me, I'm not obnoxious. I would never say that. I love it though, because I'll walk into any room. I do professional speaking. We do events. I will walk into an event of hundreds and the seas part because energetically, I'm a big freaking deal. And I walk in with the confidence because before I walk into any situation, I do a quick check. I check in and I'm like, am I feeling a weakness somewhere? And if I feel a weakness or a opening, I have to look at that. Otherwise, I will be devoured. I stand on stages in front of hundreds and thousands of people. If I have a weakness, I will be devoured by myself more than anybody.
And they'll see it.
So I do a quick check and I'm like, oh, you're feeling like, because I grew up being told I was fat, dumb, and stupid. Oh, talk about being ashamed of not being able to spell as well. Thank you, autocorrect. Now you've made it even worse when I write something. Right? I'm like, where's my autocorrect in my hand? But I was always fearful that I was the fat, dumb, and stupid kid. And then it became the fat, dumb, and stupid adult. And I would go to read from stage. And all of a sudden I could feel this overwhelm of, oh my God, they're going to find out you're the dumb kid.
Right.
So that's why I have my orangutan behind me, because I have the best story around spelling and the orangutan story. And I started telling that from stage, and it's about being in the spelling or not knowing how to spell something, orangutan, of course. And I went and I would tell that story from stage. I had more people lining up to work with me because of that one story. I felt stupid. I don't feel smart enough. And you're standing from stage telling us this story. We want to be around you. We want to understand how you, at all of 5'4", soaking wet, walk into this room and you look 10 foot tall.
Yeah, and it's really, and when you talk about the energy, so you and I've talked, I've crewed for many motivational speakers, and I've been on stage, but certainly not like you. And my energy was the same as yours. I was always the one that was sent in to be sure that the energy was up. And I had a woman that I met at one of the events. She's a gal. You were in that corner way over there to the left, and I was in this corner way. You walked in and I'm like, who just came in? That is how big your energy was. And at one point, the person who managed the crew wanted to move me, right? She wanted that energy to shift. And the woman on stage was like, hell no, she's staying right there, because I was projecting the energy to her, right? And believe me, the energy moves the audience, right? And so they were having this little eye contest thing, and I'm like, right there. Just tell me where to go and I'll be there, right? So yeah, and it's for that particular case, I totally knew what was going on. I was totally confident that what we were doing was good. I really wanted to help people propel themselves to the next level, and I still believe that the program is excellent. The presenter is full of crap, but the program is is awesome, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think if anyone is not achieving in their life what they would desire, and I don't care if it's you started your own business, you want to find the love of your life, you want the promotion, you want whatever it is that you do not have in your life, it is because you're afraid of stepping out of that comfort zone, right? You get a certain level that you need to move beyond. And it's not, we keep talking about shame because that's what this is about. But I'm going to tell you. So my motto is revealing the missing piece, and it's PEACE. So the piece and the piece. So revealing the missing piece is truly about how do we extract, despite every ounce of success you've had in your life, how do we find that one thing that's missing? Because there's always that one thing that's missing. Sometimes there's two, but the one thing is the main crux of why you aren't where you are. If it's a lack of belief, it's a lack of worthiness, a lack of confidence, the lack comes from a fear of failure, of what someone's going to think. It all boils down to, what if they see me? Guess what? No one's watching.
Right?
No one watch. You know where they're looking? In the mirror.
There. Thank you. And not only that, but so I'll tell the quick story of me moving across country. Talk about fear. At this point in time, I knew for sure I wanted to leave New England and move to San Diego. San Diego was calling to me. I was going to move. So I gave my company a 9-month notice. I said, listen, I'm on a project, want to finish the project. Don't plan for my body next year when you're doing your budgeting, right? Just all of those things getting in line. And people would come up to me and look me in the eye and say, I can't believe you're moving 3,000 miles away. That is so brave. And I thought, what is there to be afraid of? I will have clothes on my back, roof over my head, food on the table, and I'll have fun. I'll probably experience something pretty awesome if I do this thing that I want to do. It never occurred to me to be afraid to do something that I wanted to do. I just wanted to be sure that all of the stars were in alignment for me to go, right? Now, what does that have to do with shame? The other folks had a little bit of shame about the fact that they weren't brave enough, and that's where shame slips into that. So these emotions that we're talking about get compounded with the shame because you're embarrassed that I don't have the balls to move forward. You're embarrassed that I would never do that, right? Or that's the grass is always greener. It's because you don't even look at your own grass.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
I'm telling you, shame is a confused title. I think every emotion boils down to what do I feel about myself? How is it that I would describe myself? And then there's some people like, people thought, oh, this is so easy for you, Jane. You just muscle through everything. Oh, now it's real. Back then, it was just like, hang in there. Don't let them know. Don't let them see you sweat. Like, hang in there. You got this. And it's work. That's the bottom line. The work comes in, I believe, much easier when you continue. And I've said this, tattle on yourself. And a lot of the work that I did and still do goes into the inner child work. Like, we all get this anchor at certain ages of personality traits. Some people call it inner children. Some people call it characteristics, whatever it is. There's certain things that get stuck in our mind, our body, our cellular makeup that keeps us functioning. So we end up emotionally behind the 8 ball because we're still operating. Like, sometimes I'll get into work in my office and I'll be like, why do I feel like a 5-year-old is running this business? I'm like,
you are
right. What is going on? So it's truly about identifying and expressing, but only to people that are safe. You don't want to go out and tell the world, oh, you wouldn't believe, here's a fantasy I had. Can you believe it? And then, wow, you got to find the right people. And if you don't have the right people, you've got to surround yourself with different individuals and start to seek that out, or journal, do something, get it out of you. It being the feelings, being what is the story I tell about myself. I do a great exercise around money, the money story, because everybody has a money story, right? You've got an interesting money story, and we look at it, and that will dictate how successful you are. Your relationship with money can make or break your success. I promise you around that one. And that's just one part of it. The rest of the story, your money story, usually comes from a learned or inherited paradigm or belief. But the story we today tell about ourselves, yeah, did it come from our past? Absolutely. But our family isn't there anymore. And we're still telling that story. Think about that.
right.
You got to tell a more empowering story, and it takes habit of thinking.
It
So-
does. Let me just shut this up. So for me, so I had a client that she reacted to something that I said, and I record my meeting so that, if I misspoke, then I can. And so I'm like, whoa, let's back up a little bit. What just happened here? Well, you said such and such. And I went, well, no, exactly what I said, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, oh, I said, so what just happened?
Yeah.
In that moment? I felt the way I did when I was 8 years old and my brother used to tease me. And I'm like, how old are you now? You think it's time to let go of the 8-year-old? Stop blaming your brother for how you react to words that come out of people's mouths. and listen to the words specifically. So we did a little bit of work on that, but I was like, whoa, 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 let's not go on. What just happened here?
Yeah.
You just went down a rat hole, right?
Yeah.
And we do that, and we shut out other things that are going on because of those childhood. We make decisions based on a 7-year-old.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And you know, it's funny. Can you imagine hanging out with me? I see a adjustment in anyone's energy that's very close to me. I'm like, okay, what's happening? What just happened? You're like,
right.
nothing. What do you mean? Oh,
I get. Are you coaching me right now? Or are you my mother?
and they'll go, oh, you're right. I just got triggered.
Right.
And that's the key. And it's not a you know, it's not one and done. It's not like, oh, shoo, I dealt with that. Unfortunately, it shows emotional reactions show up in different forms, different areas, different degrees. And it's about, you know, when you have that trigger and you're like, oh my God, it reminds me when I was 8, you give that 8-year-old a voice. It all comes back to give every ounce of your soul, your inner children, your inner, I don't care what it is, you'll feel schizophrenic after a while. You'll be like, I got 12 inner, yes, you got 12 inner children. Right. Deal with them all. Have conversations, give them a voice, ask them what they would desire. I remember I used to have, I put a chair next to my desk here years ago because I had one that kept showing up at the office. And so I took her name, put it on a Post-it and set it on the chair. And I'm like, let's pay attention to what job you can do, because you telling me I should be afraid of everything in business is not working. I know you're trying to protect me, but what can we do to give you a job? And what she ended up becoming was the one who would discern who was going to be the crappiest person to work with. She'd be like, don't work with that one. Don't work with that one. And then I had this other part of me going, oh, because you see X's and O's behind me. I have a big, huge heart. Right. And I would be like, no, they'll be fine. Nightmare. Yep. Nightmare. So I began to say, excellent. And then Humpty Dumpty comes back together and you're all in one piece. But it's not because you ignore and go silent.
No, I do the same. I love that exercise. I actually take the person out and sit them down and have a conversation, but don't forget to put them back. Don't leave yourself like hanging all over the place, right? One of my other, so here's another exercise, guys, for that little voice in the back of your head. So the disempowering voice, like, you can't do that. I can't do that. Just as an example, right? I actually name my subconscious, and I named him George, right? And I talk to George. It's like, George, now wait a minute. What are you trying to get at here? I know that you're trying to protect me. I love you, George. But really, George, I need to get to the other side of this. So is there something important you need to share? No. Okay, George, then you can go. Or yes, what is it that you need to share? But you have the conversation and give yourself, your subconscious, a chance to respond. And, you know, sometimes I'm talking out loud. So it's a good thing that I don't work in an office anymore.
Yeah, there's so many tricks. There's so many resources. And I look and I think there's no excuse for people not to step into their power. The only excuse that I find, and it is they're lazy. I'm not kidding you. They are not willing to step fully into or admit to what they truly desire. There's some people that will sit back and play small their whole life because they're not smart enough, they're not capable, whatever it is. And it's a shame, but it comes down to, if you're going to do it, you better burn the boats. Like, burn the freaking boats, because otherwise it's really easy to go back and go, I'm just going to hang in there. You know, we look at people that are in, you know, abusive relationships, domestic violence, and you're like, why didn't you leave? Do you understand the power of programming? The power of programming, because more than likely I was in a domestic violent relationship, the recipient, not the giver of. And I thought, well, hell, it's way better than my childhood. Like, It wasn't, I wasn't being raped all the time. It was fine. It worked. So I looked at it, and my training got triggered because it's the same dominating, controlling behavior that I grew up with. So it was a matter of programming. It's really easy to program the mind habitually. If you say something enough times, it is true.
You've made the story a reality.
You've made that story. You've changed the cellular belief. You have an emotional reaction to it. The body responds. The body then becomes a subconscious mind. You don't have to tell yourself to get up and brush your teeth. You don't have to tell yourself how to get to work. You were like, whoa, how'd I get here?
Right?
You've done that. You've all been blacking out through life because your subconscious mind can handle the habitual activities of your life. What your subconscious mind can also do is rejuvenate the old and the past over and over again.
It does. And it tells those stories over and over again.
And lives them emotionally. If I sit here and tell you, oh my God, so you pull this lemon off a tree, you listen, you clean it, you polish. This lemon is just beautiful. You take a cutting board, you slice that lemon right down the middle, you pull that open, seeds are popping out, juice is dripping. You go and you cut a wedge, you go to put that lemon in your mouth. Right now,
it's already puckering, right?
Yeah, your mouth should be watering at this point. There's no lemon. But what happens is your mind, your subconscious mind goes, we know what it's like to suck on a lemon, a lime even. Do you remember sour milk? Oh, remember, it will keep everything in the database and start to flood you with those experiences. So same thing can happen if you have kids and they have a curfew and it's midnight is the curfew and it's 12:01. You're like, that son of a, that you better get home. And then it's 12:15. You're like, oh, wonder what happened. Then it's 12:30. Now you've gone from angry to they're dead in a ditch somewhere.
Right. You get in your car, you start driving around.
Yes. And you're emotionally reacting to it. That's the power of the mind. You've seen enough movies. You've experienced someone getting in a crash. You've had loss before. We know and recognize these emotions. So shame is no different. Shame comes into play when you keep secrets. When you keep secrets, I say, tell the truth and tell the truth quickly, no matter what, not unskillfully. Communication is vital. You're not going to run home and go, okay, honey, I just decided I do not want to be monogamous, so let's go and have some fun. That's not so skillful.
No,
right? Right? You're going to go home and you're going to express, my desire is this, but I might be misinterpreting it. It might just be, I want to do some more adventure with you. Now, if you don't like them, now we have a new problem. But most of the time, people are not telling the truth. They're hiding it.
Most of the time. And that is why when I was asked to find guilt and I couldn't have it, couldn't find it. I mean, come on. I was guilty about the guilt.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Or guilty about not feeling guilt. I have people that say that.
What's wrong with me? What guilt am I not telling? Right? What guilt am I not willing to face or express? I mean, it was ridiculous. It was insane, the thought process that I was going through, but it was true. I just was so not willing to face that at that point in time. And when we talk about doing the work, so at least this has been my experience, it is really difficult, really painful at first, very powerful at first. And then there were like what I call like little pimple pops that can happen through life, right? Boop, that, all right, that. And then you'll hit another painful one because you're going to get deeper. So but it's easier to excavate because you've already done it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it hurts. And yes, you cry, but you've done the work.
Yeah.
And it gets
nobody
easier.
has died from remembering their past.
Right.
I mean, the death comes from the death of a dream, the death of an expression, the death of who you truly are. That's the piece that I find tragic. I watch people that allow their past to run and predict their future and never go out. I mean, I am not going down without a fight. I promise you, if I get triggered, you'll see me. I'm wrestling myself out in the yard. I will not allow my past to take over my future. But it happens. And even though I say it's not going to, it does. It's automatic. It's an automatic program that individuals need to consciously look at. And it's funny because there is guilt around and shame around not feeling guilty or shameful. And it doesn't, it's such a disservice to ourselves that we fail to honor the truth of who we are. And all of it comes from worrying about what the world's going to say, do, or think about us. That's the truth.
Who cares? They really they care less about you than you think they do.
Yeah.
You know, and that is the mind blower for me, is that they really don't care that much about what you do or do not do. They care how you treat them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. And they care that you listen. You know this. Have you ever gone to a networking event, or you go to a friend's place or whatever, you go out with a bunch of people, and I'm a professional interviewer. I'm genuinely interested in people. I'll ask a million questions and then they walk away. You're just like, oh yeah, good to share me with you. Like, they don't care. They don't care a thing about me. And it just makes me laugh. And I'm like, and I'm worried about what people think of me. This one didn't even think to say, oh yeah, what was your name again?
Right. Oh, can I have your card? Or let's connect.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love that, because usually I'm the speaker, and people immediately, when you're the speaker, you're a professional speaker, you'll be up on stage. They put you literally up on a platform physically and in their mind. Right. And it's funny because then they find out, they're like, oh, I was sitting with her. I didn't even ask her about her. I could have learned a ton about my business to be successful. And they, and some don't even think that way. They're just like, oh, look I told her all about me. We see that. And I think it's so vital that you find your voice. That is the key. And that's, I think I'm going to put that on my tombstone. I probably won't have one. I'm going to blow in the wind after they cremate me. But if I did, all I would say on there is, she found her voice, therefore she found life.
Right.
That is, I'm telling you, that is the cornerstone to who I am today. Is very few things go unsaid. Sometimes I have to keep things, because it's usually when I'm driving. That I usually just keep to myself. That's a good choice of not expressing yourself. Nobody goes fast enough.
No, I know. Move out of the way. Well, if you're in LA, the LA area, there's only two speeds, and that is stop or 100 miles an hour. When I first moved out that way, I one time looked down at my speedometer, because I was just keeping up with traffic. Yes. And I went, holy crap. I need to get over. I should not be going this fast.
Yes. No, I'm originally from Chicago.
Yeah.
We just drive a little different. We came down to Arizona, and I thought, oh no, I've got to teach everyone how to drive.
Oh, they definitely don't know how to drive there. But look, so back to shame. It's been awesome talking with you, Jane. I am so honored to have met you. We're going to have to do a few more podcasts, because I could just talk to you forever and ever, and the listeners get something out of it. And that is the whole point of all of this, is to tell the truth, be authentic. And that's what authenticity is all about. It's not about blame. It's about, I'm triggered. I need to figure out what's wrong with me that I was triggered, and then I can have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
Absolutely.
the healing process. That's the healing process. So Jane, How can people get in touch with you if they want to?
Oh my God, you can stalk me at a number of different places. So if you go to my JaneMPowers.com, has everything. But if you would like some healing hacks, go to The Missing Piece, and it's PEACE, revealingthemissingpiece.com. That will give you some hacks that you can use, download, and obviously you can pick up my book. It has everything I've ever done to learn how to move out of my past and to create predictable future. So I put every tool and activity in there I possibly can. And the truth is, no matter what your life has handed you, the bottom line is you get to change it. You get to change your past by reimagining what it would have been like if someone stepped in. You get to reinvent your future, and you get to rewrite your story. But I'm going to tell you right now, the first thing you want to do is practice your yes and no so that you can find your voice. I have so many great expressions that I love to use with individuals. For example, let me teach you something about me. It becomes a very powerful statement that people go, oh, so you don't like when I tease you that way? No, because what ends up happening is this is how I feel. So here's what I would prefer. I've got so many tools, so many tricks that really are so valuable in finding your voice. I don't care if you make $1 an hour or $1 million an hour, your voice matters. And society does not get to tell you what you get to think, feel, do, who you get to love, how you get to show up in the world. Guy can go off on a whole big tangent of, now Idaho is saying they can't drive their trans kids for medical services across the state or they will be arrested. Come on, people. That I'm sorry. It's like, I can go on for days about everything. The bottom line is find your voice. In your voice is your power. In your power, you can do anything you choose.
And I'll have all of this information written up for folks. So if you didn't have a pen fast enough, don't worry about it. And thank you again. This is Gail Craft from The Empowering Process. If you like this, please subscribe, leave a comment. If something came up for you, let us know. Maybe we'll get back together and talk about that. And if there's someone you know who could actually gain from this, share it with them. Let them know. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jane. Gail Craft, The Empowering Process. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.